This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, everyone. This is the October 3rd meeting of the North Front Range Transportation and Air Quality Planning Council. We are here at Eaton's. We just got done with a glorious dinner provided by Liz and her crew. Two kinds of dessert. If that ever comes up again in the future, that's a good idea. So thank you, Liz. And we start our meeting always with the Pledge of Allegiance. Where we play. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We'll start with item number 2, which is public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes from September 5th. Does anybody have any issues, additions, deletions?
Move approval.
Second.
Second, got it. All in favor? Aye. All right. Disposed of that. Let's go on to the lead planning agency for air quality agenda. We start out with the Air Pollution Control Division. Jessica Burko is online, I believe. So Jessica, take it away.
Yeah, can folks hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. I got a new computer and you never know. All right. Yeah, so to highlight a few of the items that are included in the handout for this month, as always, the Air Pollution Control Division is remaining busy and we have a number of opportunities for public engagement. First on the list is our upcoming ozone pollution reduction planning meeting. We will be discussing different initiatives the state is undertaking to continue to reduce levels of ozone forming pollution, particularly focused on items that will be included in a rulemaking request that is set to be before the commission in November, largely looking at emissions from oil and gas operations. Also, our opportunities to engage with efforts related to landfill methane reductions. We're looking at ways to reduce emissions from landfills that operate in Colorado, and we have an opportunity to engage in that effort on October 8th. We are also continuing ongoing work of 2 different working groups, steering committees, whatever you want to call them. One focused on air toxics. So this is really working on implementing House Bill 22-1244, Public Protections from Toxic Air Contaminants. These upcoming meetings will be focused on how the state is going to be developing and what are known as health-based standards for different priority air toxics that are identified. The other is our nitrogen oxides steering committee. This is focused on what actions the state can take to meet our legislative requirement to reduce emissions of NOx or nitrogen oxides of upstream oil and gas operations by 50% come 2030. To also speak a little bit on what will be before the Air Quality Control Commission this October, it is going to be a full agenda as it is our joint meeting with the Board of Health. So the Air Quality Commission will be looking at a couple different actions. One is revisions to our common provisions. These are just focused on our statutory requirement to look at different fines and penalties with respect to inflation. Another is looking at regulations number 11 and 12. These are regulations that kind of oversee our vehicle inspection and maintenance program. So we're looking at making some tweaks to those to kind of update them and standardize different requirements within those regulations. We are also having a briefing on air toxics, specifically what is known as a reporting gap report, oddly enough. This is the report the division put together looking at our current air toxics reporting requirements and identifying and recommending ways that the program could potentially be improved to get more consistent and more timely data. There'll also be a couple of different annual reports, one being the formal annual report to the public, kind of giving an overview of what the Air Quality Control Commission accomplished in the past year and different updates on air data that's available. The other is also a briefing on our 2024 ozone season. This was um, this was a bit of a rough year for ozone. We did have very, very hot, very dry conditions early on in the summer that continued through. So it was a higher year for ozone than others. And representatives from the division, including our meteorology team, will be giving an update to the Commission and Board of Health on more detail on that. The last kind of big ticket item for the commission this October is they will be hearing a request for rulemaking to identify 5 priority toxic air contaminants. Again, this is a requirement stemming from House Bill 22-1244 that sets a directive for us to adopt and identify 5 priority air toxics this year. So a lot of different things going on. Happy to answer any questions, or also happy to hand it over to Dina as well.
Any questions for Jessica? Jessica, looks like you're good to go. Thank you. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is the air quality program update. Dina's online. Take it away, Dina.
Good evening. So Jessica touched on a lot of things that are upcoming, and she also highlighted the ozone season. So we are definitely going to be paying close attention to the briefing at that joint budget committee, or joint board committee, Board of Health and Air Quality Control Commission meeting here in October. But just to highlight, we look at the 4th maximum daily 8-hour average at each monitor. And then we average those values over a 3-year period and look for the highest number in reference to that 70 parts per billion standard. So this year we saw those 4th max values for the monitors, at least up in your area, being almost 10 parts per billion higher than they were in the past couple of years. And so that means that the area needs to see much lower values in the next 2 years to make that 3-year average come down. So there's a lot more to be done in terms of ozone, and we look forward to hearing what the division is proposing and what's being considered at the RAC. But just for reference, I also want to highlight that we are also looking at values that are in Rocky Mountain National Park, as well as the Gothic monitor that's up in Crested Butte, where there's really not a whole lot around it. And just for reference, we saw 4th max values at Rocky Mountain National Park at 78 parts per billion, and then at the Gothic monitor at 68. So that's still really close to the 70 parts per billion standard with nothing around it. So there's a lot to be learned also about ozone. So we will continue looking at all the information that's coming in. Bottom line, it wasn't a good year, and there's more to do. In addition to that briefing at the Joint Board of Health Air Quality Control Commission meeting here in October, the RAC's also going to be holding an October 22nd, 24 ozone attainment forum. So I think there's going to be more discussions there. So if you're watching those kinds of events, I would just definitely take a look at those too. If not, I will definitely report back. Regulating indirect sources, and those are installations or facilities that cause emissions, and they're like large campuses or commercial developments or warehouses, those kinds of things that draw a lot of either vehicle traffic, or they have large fleets that they use in their daily business. So regulating those indirect sources continues to be a topic on being considered in a number of different forums. So the Air Quality Control Commission is considering revising their greenhouse gas resolution to include additional near-term greenhouse gas control strategies, including regulating indirect sources. The RAC they hosted a meeting this last month, kind of commencing efforts that they had started in years past. And they had basically talked this last month about rules that have been adopted in other states, in particular rules related to regulating large warehouses and warehouses that had large fleets. So we will look at phase 2 study, the data that comes out of that here soon, and we'll understand more about how about the indirect sources here in Colorado. So we anticipate that. Additionally, the Transportation Legislative Review Committee also considered in their draft bill number 1, they considered establishing authority in Colorado to regulate indirect sources. And they directed, or that bill language would have directed the Air Quality Control Commission to adopt indirect source rules for warehouses by the end of 2025, and then to explore doing more. So I want to highlight that bill number 1 was not referred out of that Transportation Legislative Review Committee. And it did include some other elements that we would want to normally track as well. And that one other element in particular was setting emission reduction targets for transportation, or basically on-road and non-road mobile sources here in Colorado. Setting targets for reduction in emissions from those sources that contribute precursor pollutants, as well as greenhouse gases and other air toxics. So while that bill didn't make it out of that committee, I just want to highlight that may still be something that we see in this upcoming legislative session. So we're tracking things related to indirect sources. We're tracking things related to setting vehicle emission reduction targets as well. Kind of moving on to other bills that the TLRC did refer to legislative council. There's a Bill 2 in particular, and that bill directly affects NPOs and transit providers, the larger transit providers, as well as those folks that want to opt into a program. And so it talks about mode choice target assessments during statewide planning development cycles. It touched on mode choice target establishment itself, progress measurement, gaps evaluation, and greenhouse gas mitigation measures analyses. And it did also mention the non-attainment air pollution mitigation enterprise as being able to award grant funding for NPOs that are trying to develop those kinds of plans in relation to that. So that's another bill. It was referred out of the TLRC, and that's something that we're going to want to track as well. There were several other bills. I'm not really going into them from an air quality standpoint, but they're definitely related to the work that the NPO does and transportation related. Then the Clean Air Science Advisory Council, or CASAC, that's a 7-member body that helps EPA review the current science in setting new or revised National Ambient Air Quality Standards, NAAQS. And if you'll recall that the ozone standard is going to be reconsidered. They're undergoing a new review. They kicked that off earlier this year. I just wanted to highlight that they have several new members, and of the 7 members, 2 are from the West. There's one from Utah and one here in Colorado. Colorado State University's Jennifer Peel is now on that that council. And so there's some good representation from the Intermountain West, and that's a good thing. All right. September was in some ways a slow month in terms of all the activities, but looking at these bills and tracking what's going on with some of these new control strategies, that's kind of kept us busy. So next steps are tracking what's going on with the commission's procedural rules. We're not did not file for party status, but we're tracking the activities there, and then we'll continue to track what's going on in terms of ozone planning and control strategies, and the more formal update from the state on the status of ozone for the summer. So with that, are there any questions?
Bill 2 that you talked about, Dina, is that a study or is that actually programming dollars for NEPME?
I think it's more than a study. So I'm looking at my notes here. CDOT has to present a statewide mode choice assessment. And so they're going to be looking for recommendations for MPOs and subject transit providers. And so you're going to be providing input to that and having to do work to provide that input. And so some of that work can be offset by seeking grant funding from that non-attainment air pollution mitigation enterprise.
You good?
I don't know what to say after that, so I'll just let it go.
Any other questions for Dina? All right, seeing none. Dina, can you hang on just for a second? Item number
Yes.
6 is Air Quality Council report from Kristen, and she's
Okay.
unable to join us tonight. If there's any questions for Kristen, her information is in the handout, but while we got Dina, we can ask her any questions you may have. All right, seeing none. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you.
All right, item number 6 we covered. Let's move on to the report of the chair. I'm going to cheat here and turn it over to Paul for some comments. Basically, some of his comments anyway have to do with PD 14 and a portion of it that's kind of bounced back and forth, and we'll give everybody an update. The reason we want to make sure everybody's updated, because we did write, as an executive team, we did write a letter regarding this subject, and I just want to be fully transparent so you all know what's going on and won't be surprised in the future. So Paul, if you'll take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So last month at our Planning Council meeting, we talked a little bit about this Policy Directive 14, PD 14, which is a CDOT policy that then guides the development of the statewide transportation plan and the 10-year plan. And it was moving pretty quickly at the time. At that point, the STAC, the State Transportation Advisory Committee, had voted to recommend that the Transportation Commission not take action on the new draft of PD 14 as it was written. Since the last meeting, a lot has occurred. As Chair Malo mentioned, the executive committee composed a joint letter with the Upper Front Range TPR executive committee as well, and that was submitted to the Transportation Commission, basically requesting that PD 14 be amended so that it recognizes the needs of fast-growing areas and acknowledges that capacity projects are an important priority for many regions as well. So that went to the Transportation Commission in their September meeting. Commissioner Kelly was a part of that conversation, and initially he requested that the item be delayed for a month to provide a little bit of additional time to work on it. That didn't get support from the other commissioners. Ultimately, they voted to adopt PD 14 as it was drafted, with Commissioner Kelly dissenting. And so if we can bring up on the screen the memo from the package, if that's possible. The executive committee asked me to kind of give the history that is where we are, and then just show a little bit of the language itself, because that's probably the best way to really get an understanding of what the issue is that the staff had identified and that was addressed in the executive committee's letter. So if you'll scroll down a little further to the red text. So in the pre-existing PD 14, the one that was in place before, there was a goal which was called mobility. And this was the text that was in there. It captured a number of things, including reduction of greenhouse gases. And then if you scroll down just a little bit further, there's an acknowledgement of capacity on roadways, and then measures and targets related to operations level of service, incident clearance time, along with other greenhouse gas related goals as well. And so this was language in the old version of PD 14. This new action struck this out. It removed that, that language associated with this goal. And so if you scroll down a little further, this is language that, for the most part, it's not a one-to-one, but it replaces that mobility goal. So it's called sustainably increased transportation choice. It includes a number of the things that were in the old PD 14 related to greenhouse gas emission reduction. It includes targets for clean transportation and for transit. But what it doesn't include is that language around operations level of service and the acknowledgement of roadway capacity. And so if we were looking at a strike through underline, that first text would be the underline, the insert, and then this would be, or this would be the part that was inserted. The first part was the part that was removed. And so the executive committee wanted to bring this and have a discussion about it this evening, and really seek guidance from the rest of the council to determine whether any additional action is desired on behalf of the council related to PD 14. When the commission adopted it, they did indicate this was a living document that could be amended in the future. And of course, I welcome members of the executive committee and Commissioner Kelly, who are all intimately involved in this process as it works its way through, to add any additional perspectives and context as well.
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to make one comment real quick. Commissioner Kelly, thank you for supporting us. Appreciate that. Just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with this. So I'll open up questions. This did come up in today's staff meeting as a comment and part of the chairman's report. He did mention it's a living document, meaning that changes can be made, but if you read the writing on the wall, I don't think there's much room for that. But my suggestion is we let the dust settle for a month or two, and then if we want to take another shot at it, we'll decide as a group and how we want to do that. So is there any questions regarding PD 14 or how it's planned? Yes, John.
Comment.
Yep.
So one of the things that I think there was several people, even Dr. Cog had this kind of discussion at staff when we started this. By eliminating the congestion mitigation and ability to manage roads, it takes it out of our toolbox. And your 10-year plan is basically based on this policy that's put in place. PD 14 drives what the 10-year plan actually is going to drive in terms of the Transportation Commission's goals. So I think the original one, in my mind, still has it wrapped around with choice, mobility, reduction of VMT, all the things that they wanted, but they took out the operational level of service. And I think one of the things I think drives that is a lot of our priorities in our communities. We're not built out. We're not Denver. We're not Boulder. We're not the urban centers in some locations. And even Fort Collins is pretty built out, right? I mean, Fort Collins has a lot of that already there. It really hinders our ability to grow and to handle our new growth and our capacity and our roadway. So that's why it became a concern. We're not all the same. We're not all built the same. And like Eastern Colorado or some of these other communities like Lamar that needs truck routes and stuff like that, it sort of hinders that. So we're not the only community and only TPR. I mean, we're an MPO, but the other TPRs have concerns too.
Thank you, John. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Bowley.
So I'm not sure I agree with you may have to wait several months, to submit something. I'm not sure that, strategically that's great because they just heard from you, right? They just heard from me. They just heard from Stack. And, to keep, if you can, keep the, pedal to the metal. And, I had said, let's give them time, let's give the Stack, let's give NPOs, let's, time to submit specific language. And as Paul, pointed out, there's pretty good language that was there before. And, so if it was a perfect world, I would go next meeting and be public comment again, and then try to get Stack to comment directly to the language and submit language that says, okay, this is a living document. This is what we are complaining about. This is what we think should be in there. So give the commission language, and, then, it's not a generic pick apart and say, now, we'll wait. It's react to some specific things. Now, it would be stronger if the more groups you could get to say, this is the language that we want. Why'd you take that out? Let's put it back in. We'll be happy. If you can't pull that together in short order, then you got to wait till November, December, whatever. But you might even, if that's the case, have a comment that you submit at the next meeting that says, we're in discussion with Stack, we're in discussion with, other MPOs, whatever the case might be, to amend the language, and we will be back with language so that it just keeps the ball, going. Yeah, that's what I would.
No, I appreciate that. I'll look at my fellow counselors here and.
That's good advice.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
the squeaky wheel gets the grease,
All right,
then
I like the
be loud.
impression, okay.
Well,
Johnny, I'm sure
you know
you
where I stand.
want to set on it, right?
You know where I stand. So, and I really like Commissioner Kelly's comment is that we get, because I think we just had elections, right? The new chair took over, the new vice chair took over. So maybe we reach out to Gary and the chair and say, hey, we have some language that it's not really drastically different. It's just bringing back what was in it that we're comfortable. It's not like saying, hey, we're going to do congestion mitigation and expansion, right? So, but this gives us an avenue to be allowed to do it in our communities, right? So maybe we reach out to Gary. We do exactly what Commissioner said, and then we see where Gary. I think Gary and Odoricio and some of the other ones, Commissioner Odoricio, I think they back this.
Oh, okay.
And then maybe we get that on the agenda for Stack, and not be strong, but just say, hey, here it is. We're putting this in front of you. We're going to keep putting this in front of you until we either get told go away, we're not listening, or we start making some changes.
And also just, I'm only going to be there, probably through October. So this might be my last meeting, and you don't have to educate another transportation commissioner on the whole deal.
Got it. Commissioner James has his hand up, I believe, online. Go ahead, Commissioner.
It is the first time that I've ever politely raised my hand in one of these meetings, Mr. Chair, so therefore I'd be polite. I appreciate the comments of Commissioner Kelly. I appreciate the comments of Councilor Olson. I obviously take a little more stern track on that. You just attended the 34 coalition meeting, which many of you did. We heard a report from Jerome that said the population along Highway 34, basically a 9-mile stretch, will increase by a factor of 5 in the next 20 years, by a factor of 5. If we don't agree, if we don't address that with congestion mitigation, if we don't address that with a conversation about level of service, it's not a matter of it prohibiting our ability to grow, because guess what? We're going to grow. But what it will do is create more deaths and less safety on that piece of roadway. I don't know why we are not mobilizing on making sure that our voice is heard now. To wait, I think, is foolish. And that is my comment, Mr. Chair.
Understood. Appreciate it. I'm going to think out loud here. I think I see a consensus, and maybe we can start with Paul, going back to the drawing board and come up with recommended changes. Basically, you've already done it. Maybe we can do this via email to speed things up. Maybe by midweek, you could have suggested changes to the language out via email with request of the council members to get back to you in a couple of days. And then we can make sure everything's done before, I guess, if we agree on the language, we send it where? Is the recommendation to the new chair?
If we want to go through the stack, I mean, we can tackle this as an MPO ourselves with the commission, or I would recommend that we get stack on board, send it to the chair, maybe put it on the agenda, get it out to everybody, right?
Yeah.
And then stack then we have backing and not just our MPO.
One of our partners is Upper Front Range. Are you okay with this? I know you're ready to roll. Yeah, good. Any other comments from the council?
Yeah, with regard to congestion mitigation, one of the reasons for it would also be to reduce pollution, because when you have congestion, you have vehicles moving slowly or stopped, and the engines are running and they're not going anywhere. So I think one of the reasons you would want to mitigate congestion is to improve pollution, which is one of our major missions. So I would include that as one of the logics behind the request.
All right. So go ahead, Paul. Hopefully you have a plan out of it this time.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of summarize back what I'm hearing and see if this sounds like the right sequence. Timeline-wise, if we want to include stack, we've got the benefit of the fact that the stack meeting was this morning, so we have a month before the next stack meeting. So I'm happy to work on this language a little bit and get something together that looks like it could be a proposal, get it out by email next week to council members to seek individual feedback from council members, see if we have a consensus or any additions or deletions that we think we should make from that. Concurrent with that, it sounds like there could be some reaching out to the staff, chair and vice chair.
And get them to send it out to the entire stack and say, this is something that's been floated, and let the stack start looking at it and see if they want to tweak it. I'm sure most of them won't. It's language that's already been in there. And then the chair can then put it on the agenda that we could take an official vote on that, and then they can take it to commission the next week.
So you're, okay, because we have 2 weeks before Transportation Commission meets. That's
We
all.
can do this over email with the chair too, if he can get.
Are we shooting for November?
That would get us to the November Transportation Commission, because it would go, if you wanted staff to, really deliberate and take an action or a recommendation on it, it would have to be next month.
They can do it over email too. We've done it over email too.
Right, but you only have 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
in other words, you gotta, you basically have like a week.
Yeah, and
Because-
and then basically Gary just walks in and delivers that through the presentation when he gives his presentation to the Transportation Commission.
Is that realistic or not?
I'm thinking by the end of next week, I think we can, it's going to give the counselors a day or two most.
Yeah, okay, good.
Comments back. And there may not be many comments if at all, so.
Well, there might not be, since it's already language
Yeah.
they've seen
Yeah.
before.
So you want them to agree to sign off on, the submission back to Transportation Commission, in 2 weeks. So in other words, it comes from as many people as you can get it to come from.
Right. Well, let's shoot for Friday of next week, get all the comments back.
Good.
Get it mailed off to whoever we decide to mail it to.
I'll reach out to Gary,
Give them a heads up.
give him a heads up that it's coming, and then they might have to pull an executive committee together.
Yeah, tell him he's just gotta jump up and get it done, otherwise.
Even if he does his 3-minute comment with it and ask for an amendment, he can do that too.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't even need to be during his report.
All right, you comfortable with that, Paul?
Yeah, I'll get something out by the beginning of next week to collect comments. So by the end of next week, we can have something ready to go to staff.
Super. Commissioner James, you okay with that?
Stumbling for cameras and microphones. Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've got a plan.
Government can move fast.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you all. That was a great conversation. We're gonna go back to Paul. He's got some other comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Since you generously gave me like all of your time, my main item was to talk about PD 14. So I used my time to just give some general operational updates for the NPO. For those of you who were around for the TMO meeting a little bit earlier, you heard an allusion to Part B of the TMO work. So I've got some background for that, which is all good news. We received a carbon reduction program, or CRP, set of funds, which we had anticipated, but we finally got the award and got the contract. And that enables us to begin work on the second phase of the TMO launch work. So Part A has been to do the setup on this US 34 TMO. Part B is to really establish the guidebook for how the NPO can continue to serve as an incubator for additional TMOs, and then what that future state looks like, what the role of the NPO is going to be in as a communication conduit between TMOs and keeping everything coordinated. So that's just a good news item to share. A couple of funding opportunities that are open that I'd like to just make sure our member communities are aware of. CDOT has a Safe Routes to School call for projects that has been open and will continue to be open until November 4th. If you're interested, the information about that is online. In addition, if you're looking at it and you wonder if there are resources that the NPO could bring to help support an application, we do have a Safe Routes to School subcommittee with some folks that are really experienced in submitting Safe Routes to School grants. So feel free to reach out if you're thinking of it and just need to talk through or get some additional eyes on it. That's something we can help with. Because Commissioner Stevens is not with us this evening, I'll mention that NAPME is opening their call for projects as well. Last we checked on the website, it's not quite open yet, but we would anticipate that'll be pretty soon. This is the non-attainment area pollution mitigation enterprise. There's $17.3 million available. The minimum project size for that is $500,000. And so if you are interested in that, keep your eye on the website, and we expect more information to be up on that soon. Hiring updates. We don't have any new hires since last month, but we do have our Planner 1, who I introduced last month. She's with us in person, Michaela Merrick, if you want to wave. So now you've got a face to the name, and you'll be seeing a lot more of Michaela in the future. In addition, our vacancies, we've got the accountant position that we've been recruiting for. Finally had a lot of success in that recruitment. We've got finalists lined up, and we'll be doing a final round of interviews for that in a couple of weeks. We're also interviewing for our vacant mobility planner position, and so potentially by next month, hopefully I'll have some good news on one or both of those positions. And then finally, I'd like to mention that just in the past week or so, we did receive approval from FHWA on our 2024-2025 Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP, which is one of the federally mandated programs that this NPO is responsible for preparing. That's been with them for a while. It was submitted all the way back in May, but it's worked its way through its process. We did get approval on that. There were some comments on there for some things that they wanted to see represented a little bit differently. And so in the next couple months, you'll see us come back with an amendment to the UPWP just to follow up on those comments that we got from FHWA. So those are all my updates, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Paul? Michaela, I'd just like to add my welcome to you. Welcome on board, appreciate it. Let's move on to item number 9, which is the TAC report. That's a written report. You can find it on page 21 of the packet. And then item number 10 is mobility, which is a written report. You can find that on page 21 of the handout. No, that's wrong. I don't have the page number, but it's a handout, part of the handout. So, agenda item number 11, the North Front Range CDOT traffic congestion performance measures updates. Jacob Kirschner, I'm not sure if he's online or not. Okay. Of course, he's with CDOT. So take it away, Jacob.
Good evening. Let me pull up my presentation real quick and we'll go ahead and get started. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening. My name is Jacob Kirschner and I'm the Performance Program Manager at the Colorado Department of Transportation. Tonight, I'll be discussing key performance measures related to traffic congestion and propose adjustments to our current 2025 congestion targets. These targets are important as they help us to improve travel times and reduce traffic congestion. I'll present a condensed version of the information shared with the TAC on September 18th, tailored for tonight's meeting. Before diving into the details, I'd like to provide a quick background on what the national performance measures are. The FHWA requires state DOTs and MPOs establish data-driven 2- and 4-year targets for safety, infrastructure condition, and system performance. CDOT set its targets for 2023 and 2025 back in 2022. We are now in the middle of our performance period review, which allows us to reassess and adjust those 2025 targets based on current data. In September, we worked with subject matter experts as well as North Front Range MPO to review and recommend adjustments, and we submitted updated targets to FHWA on October 1st, 2024, Tuesday of this week. Tonight, I'll be focusing specifically on the traffic congestion targets, which are required for North Front Range MPO and DRCOG, given their large urban population and are in air quality non-attainment. The key measures we'll be focusing on are peak hours of excessive delay and non-single occupancy vehicle travel, measures that tell us how bad traffic congestion is during rush hour and how many people are using alternatives to driving alone. Over the last month, CDOT and North Front Range MPO worked closely to review and assess our 2025 targets for both the peak hours of excessive delay and non-SOV travel. After reviewing this data, we did determine that adjustments are needed to better align our targets with the realities of travel conditions. I'll dive into these specific adjustments in a moment, but first, it's important to note that we submitted our mid-performance period report to FHWA on October 1st, which included these recommended changes. While North Front Range MPO has agreed in principle with the adjustments, they won't be able to formally approve them until their November 7th Planning Council meeting. To address this, CDOT worked with FHWA to create a memo indicating agreement in principle with formal approval pending. So tonight, we are asking for a general head nod of consensus for these adjustments with formal action to follow at the November meeting. Starting with the peak hour of excessive delay, we set a 2-year target for 2023 of under 3.8 hours, and we slightly missed it with a performance of 3.9. Our 2025 target is currently set at below 3.7. For non-SOV travel, we initially set a 2-year target above 25.3%, and we exceeded that with the performance of 30.9%. Our current 2025 target is 25.6%. In the following slides, I'll explain why we are recommending adjustments to these targets based on recent data and forecasted models. Starting with peak hours of excessive delay, This measures how long people are stuck in traffic during rush hour. The more time people spend in traffic beyond what is expected, the higher the PHED, giving us insight into how severe congestion is. We initially used a predictive model in 2021 to set our 2023 and 2025 targets. However, the pandemic created uncertainties about how these traffic patterns would rebound, which is why we are now updating those models with more current data. Based on this data, we recommend increasing the target to 3.9 hours for 2025 to better reflect current conditions and avoid setting overly optimistic goals. FHWA does discourage setting aspirational targets, so we focus on realistic, data-driven targets that can be achieved. Non-SOV travel tracks how many people use alternatives to driving alone. This includes carpooling, biking, walking, public transit, or working from home. The goal is to reduce the number of vehicles on the road and promote more sustainable modes of travel. Starting in 2020, after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, we saw a significant increase in non-SOV travel due to changing commuting patterns, primarily an increase of telework. We initially set modest targets, unsure of how these patterns would evolve. In 2023, the Fort Collins urbanized area significantly exceeded the target with the performance of 30.9%, well above our original expectations. Given these results, we recommend adjusting the 2025 target from 25.6% to 31.1%. That's a 0.2% increase from where we're at currently. That's about a 0.1% increase over the next 2 years. These better align with recent data and trends that we have seen. That concludes the informational purpose of my presentation. We are asking for the North Front Range MPO Planning Council's general agreement or head nod for the recommended target adjustments. Formal action would take place at the November meeting where the council would vote on a resolution. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'm happy to address any questions or comments you may have.
Yeah, before we do the head nodding, any questions from the councilors? Johnny, go ahead.
So I have some concerns on peak hour congestion. So our result was 3.9. Obviously, we're going up, even though we're getting people out of cars. So we're going to raise our SOVs to 31.1, and we're going to raise our target of congestion. I think that's like counterintuitive to me. I think if we're going to get people out of cars, we should be seeing our congestion go down, not go up. And I have a really hard time with raising that number from, our result was 3.9, so we just raise it a little higher so we can achieve it. That to me is like, I'm not looking for an aspirational goal, but I don't know if that's what we should be looking at in terms of it. This goes to PD 14, what we talked about. I mean, this is verbatim. I don't know, did you read ahead? To talk, he said it himself, reduction in congestion helps air quality. And we want people out of their SOVs, right? We want to get them in where there's more people traveling together. But I truly believe that the 20 to 22 numbers are out of whack, right? People are starting to go back to the office more. They're starting to do 2 or 3 days. In 20 to 22, there was people working 24/7 at home. So I really think that these numbers might be looked at as these are numbers we can run in the model, but I think we're setting ourselves too high in one and maybe too low in the other.
And so if I could add to that too, I'm kind of with you. I feel like if we just raise our targets, I guess I could turn this on, but if we raise our targets, are we just doing that just so we can achieve it? Because I kind of feel like that's, again, counterintuitive. If we want to be able to get grants or get funding or show that we have congestion, keep the targets the same, and then that shows that we need help. Yeah. Instead of just, you know, it's like setting a diet goal. You know, I can achieve it if I just keep increasing my calories every day. So. Yeah. Again, counterintuitive. So.
Anything further? Does anyone have a suggestion for a new number for Jacob that we'd be comfortable with?
Well, our result was 3.9, our target was 3.8 and 3.7. So our target in 2025 was 3.7, our target in 23 was 3.8. We haven't hit it, so we're gonna raise it to 3.9.
So you want to go back to 3.7?
I think that's a number we should be looking at.
Anybody else? James, is that doable?
The concern there is that with FHWA discouraging aspirational targets and considering data-driven targets, FHWA really recommends and encourages submitting targets that we could achieve. Given that we also presented this in front of the technical advisory committee and there was kind of no concerns there, these targets were submitted to FHWA on October 1st.
Jake, the technical advisory committee doesn't make policy decisions. This council does.
Understood.
If I may, Jacob, this is Becky talking for you online. So these targets, I don't know, and I don't know if this was mentioned, but it says Fort Collins because these are just to the TMA area. Right. So this is not the whole region. This is just the TMA portion for both of these targets that are federal targets that we have to do, or the state has to do in concert with us and also with Dr. Cog as well. These targets are like the other federal targets that we have that they're not the targets that we look to when we do cultural projects and safety and things like that. These are just targets that we have to do that are federally required.
But they are
that
performance
sounds terrible.
Measures.
They are performance measures, yes. But we have our own targets because, you know, when these first came out, we didn't have to do these two particular targets. We didn't have to do the SOV, and we didn't have to do the peak hour of excessive delay. So we did our own regional targets. So we have those that look at the entire region, where these two particular ones just look at the TMA. And I don't know if that helps, if that confuses things even more, but the federal targets have to be data-driven. Like our safety target has to be data-driven. They have to be data-driven. We're not allowed to do aspirational targets, whereas our specific regional targets that we have in the RTP, we're allowed to do whatever we want. We could say, you know, 0 deaths, or we could say, you know, we want 0 hours of delay. We can be aspirational. So I don't know if that helps or hurts.
But the TMA affects all of our air quality for the entire region. It's just, TMA is just one little area, but air quality is based on Weld, Larimer, all of it.
These don't impact air quality, though. These don't go into the conformity determination. These are separate from that.
But congestion does affect air quality.
Correct. No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying these particular targets do not impact conformity, whether we meet it, we don't meet it, the GHG target, they don't impact that.
To make it 5. That's not aspirational, that's going up.
So this is just going to the government because the government needs those
FHWA,
numbers.
Yes. Correct.
And it doesn't really have any kind of aspirational effect.
Yeah.
So it's literally, what do you have to do to have, check mark so that you can get the money?
Yeah, so what's the consequence of not meeting the goal?
Jacob, is there a consequence for the state?
There is no consequences. So the national performance measures, the overall of them, there's safety, infrastructure condition. So kind of some of the pavement and bridge ones, there would be consequences there. For these congestion measures, there is no consequences there. It's more of a check the box exercise, not something that necessarily drives policy decisions at CDOT. We kind of hold towards our PD 14 performance measures there. Kind of as Becky mentioned, it's kind of more of a technical check the box practice for FHWA.
Andrew Toronto here. So what is the national average then of these targets?
I do not have an answer for that. Dr. Cog had 15.8 hours of excessive delay, if that helps provide any context.
Okay, so relatively, Fort Collins is doing pretty good.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Very low, especially compared to Denver.
Go to the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to acknowledge the kind of procedural timeline issue that we've encountered here as well, which is that CDOT needed to get these numbers to FHWA by October 1st. And so the only, nod that they were able to get up to that point was from the TAC. And this was done via the agreement that Jacob described, whereby, we would then come to the planning council and go through the formal process of attempting to get those endorsed. And so if the council chose not to endorse them, I don't know, maybe this is a question for CDOT, procedurally what issues that would create then with needing to work with FHWA on the information that CDOT's already submitted.
I just have one other comment if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so with regard to PD 14 and the justification for the congestion being added back in, it might be worthwhile to point out that on page 2 it says DRCOG and NFRMPO must work with CDOT to establish joint targets for congestion since their planning areas include parts of urbanized areas with over 200,000 people, et cetera. So as Paul said, left hand, right hand, we need to get them to shake hands and add that back in PD 14.
So it doesn't sound like there's anything in it for us to change these numbers and get back to the submission. It will just delay things, or
Yeah, I think they've been given to us and it's part of the process and we could put a flag in the ground and fight it if we want to, but I'm not sure it's worth it.
I don't think it's worth putting a flag in the ground, but you will not get my vote. Because I mean,
No, head nod.
yeah, well, it does. My head nod is no, but there's 12 council members, so it's like, I just think doing things just to rubber stamp things, I don't know if any of us are elected to rubber stamp anything. But there's nothing that it's gonna do. I think Commissioner Kelly said it right. It's not gonna hinder us, it's not gonna help us, it's just, I don't know,
It's a check.
it's celebrating my daughter's birthday.
It's a process check, for sure.
Commissioner James has.
Yes. Oh, Commissioner James, go ahead, sir.
Johnny, the difference between your daughter's birthday and this number is your daughter's birthday matters. I do a lot of governmenty things on a given day, and this is the most governmenty thing I'll do today. We're debating a number that doesn't matter. Just
Okay.
put a number down. What does tax say? What does Fort Collins say? I'm good.
Any other comments? I guess I'm leaning towards nodding my head.
Yeah, I'm with Commissioner James, and the only thing that I'll say really is we should strive to do better. It's just a target, so if it's really just ceremonious in nature, might as well keep the 3.7.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Anything further?
3.9, not 3.7.
3.9.
Yeah, 3.9. All right, everyone okay with that? Shake it, whatever, I think we are. Anything else, Jacob?
That is all. I appreciate your time tonight.
All right, thank you, Jacob. All right, moving on. That was interesting. Let's move on to agenda item number 12, the September 2024 TIP. Jonathan, come forward. He's already there, look at that. Does that work?
Yep.
Hello, everyone. So there are two projects for the September TIP amendment cycle. The first project is from Loveland and is the new project Transit Center Building Reconstruction. This project is the final design and construction of a transit center building at 350 West 37th Street. This project uses $3,967,007 in federal 5339B funding $251,752 in state LOMA funding, that's LOMA, and $770,000 in local in-kind funding, and that is all in fiscal year 25. The second project is from Transport, and is the new project, Transport Accessibility Enhancements. This project will enhance ADA accessibility at bus stops and the downtown transit center. It will allow for the purchase of amenities at said bus stops. It will allow for the construction of ADA compliant bus stops on North College Avenue. This project uses $2,411,000 and $550 in federal 559B funding and $415,450 in local funding in fiscal year 25. The 30-day public comment period opened on September 11th and will close on October 10th. The approval of the TIP amendment is contingent on there being no negative comments being made from the public following council approval. An equity analysis was conducted for both projects and it can be found in the council packet. NFRMPO staff does not note any disadvantages with the projects. TAC recommended Planning Council approval of the September TIP amendment on September 18th, 2024.
Great. Any questions for Jonathan? All right, seeing none, this is a resolution. I'll go ahead and make the motion. I make a motion for resolution 2024-015 of the North Front Range Transportation Air Quality Planning Council approving the September 2024 amendment to the fiscal year 2024-2027 Transportation Improvement Program Plan.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're good on resolution 2024. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it. Next one is item 13, which is NMOF call for projects. And that'll be Mark. Hi, Mark.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. So over the past several months, NPO staff has presented and sought feedback on the 2024 MMOF call. Staff then inputted this feedback into a guidance to TAC representatives to get their feedback. No feedback was received. With that being said, staff has finalized or is finalized the draft for the document. And it includes the schedule, requirements, as well as the scoring process and criteria. So I'm just going to go through real quickly through the document so you can see what's included. So TAC representatives did not have any comments for staff. With that being said, there were some minor changes to the funding estimates. Ride NOVO requested a change, a swap of years from 2027 to 2025, which you'll see here in a second. Pardon me for. Yeah. So as you can see, there was a change in funding for those years, but that doesn't affect the overall funding availability for the call. As I noted, the schedule's included in that document. The main important dates to recall for that are the call for project opens tomorrow, assuming that you approve the process. The draft applications will be due at the end of October, and then the call will close in mid-November. Just a reminder in terms of requirements, eligible recipients include member governments and partner agencies. Eligible project types include operating and capital costs for fixed route transit, TDM programs, multimodal transportation studies, modeling tools, greenhouse gas mitigation projects, and bicycle and pedestrian projects. There's also the two categories, category A being quantifiable GHG reducing projects, and then category B being non-quantifiable reducing projects. Again, the minimum request size is 300,000 for infrastructure projects and 25,000 for transit projects. And in terms of maximum requests, you can see there, there's category A total there for about 3.4 million, category B about 1.1 million, totaling that 4.5. And essentially, agencies could receive up to 1.7, essentially half of the category A funding, and again, half of the category B funding. So each agency would be able to receive about 2.2 million in funds. Again, for the match requirements, certain communities have certain match rates, as you can see there on the table. Most of the communities have 50% match, but Evans, Greeley, Loveland, and Larimer have a 25% match, and then Garden City has a 0% match. And then there's a section dedicated to the CDOT review. Essentially, when projects come in to the North Front Range NPO, they're passed along, forwarded to CDOT staff, who specialize in certain subject matters. So there's someone who reviews the infrastructure projects, TDM projects, someone reviews the transit, and then also the planning and programming projects. And then there are a number of other requirements related to the application, related to the MOF program, funding, requirements related to the RTP as well as the ATP, and the other requirements. There's again an equity analysis that's required as part of this process. And then as far as submitting is concerned, there needs to be a CDOT letter of support for either state highway or ITS projects. If there's an instance where a sponsor submits more than one project, they have to provide a prioritization by category. And also if they are submitting a transit-related project, they have to submit a sustainable funding plan. And then CDOT, in addition, has its own requirements as well, as far as reporting. So, like I said, essentially it covers the material we've talked about over the past few months, with obviously the minor change to the funding estimates. So with that, TAC did request that the council approve the guidelines document and open the call tomorrow.
Any questions for Mark, please? A lot of information. All right, thank you, Mark. This is a resolution. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2024-16 of the North Front Range Transportation Air Quality Planning Council adopting the 2024 NFRMPO call for project process and guidebook. So moved. Second?
Second.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any further conversation? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, looking good. Thank you. That's approved. Yeah. All right. Item number 14, North Front Range 10-year priority list update. Becky, you're back on stage.
So, yes, once again, I'm here to talk about the 10-year call for projects process. Let's see if I can get us there quicker without making everyone dizzy. Yes, here we go. Okay. And so just as a reminder, the 10-year list of projects for the North Front Range NPO is concentrated on 6 priority corridors that council approved and adopted in 2019 and then reaffirmed in 2023. And those are I-25, US 34, US 85, US 287, and then the 2 state highways 392 and 14. Yesterday, I sent out a list of 49 projects from the original list, as well as the projects from the 2050 RTP, since those have gone through the conformity determination process, and added those to the list. So we have 49 projects total. So we have 29 roadway projects across 3 tiers, 6 transit projects, and 4 non-motorized projects. Sent that out to the TAC members to review to make sure, one, those projects are still correct, Are the descriptions correct? Are the funding costs that are listed there correct? Are the limits of the projects correct? Just to make sure all those technical components are correct before provide them to you to look at ahead of the January workshop that we'll be having. And so I did want to talk about the workshop today, what the structure and how that will work, because that will determine the space that is needed in the town of Berthoud, who I will work with next week to figure out dates, and then I will send out a doodle poll for those dates that correspond with when they're available for the space that we need. So there are two different ways that we could do this workshop. We could score all, or you could score all 49 projects. And then based on the Transportation Commission's criteria, which we will talk about next month, what that criteria looks like, but score all of those projects. So across the three different types of roadway, non-motorized, and transit, to look at the multimodal components of some of those projects. So the US 34 projects are spread across those three different types, looking at all those together, or conduct a dot voting exercise to rate the projects into tiers. And then only scoring those that rise to the tier 1 level, which are those that get more than 3 votes, so 3 dots. Those are like the ones that rise to the top. And that was the format that we did at the January 2020 workshop, where we had giant printouts of all of the different projects, so you could actually read them. I don't know about you, but I can't see when they're really small. So putting those up there, and then everyone had different colors of dots for the different rounds. So everyone got a certain number of dots, so 3 dots per entity. You go and you put the dots, so it was all yellow dots for round 1, and we had a second round, and they were all green dots or something like that. If that is the way that we want to do it again, then we need a little bit more space than if we did just the projects all together, where you can sit at tables and do all of that. So is there a preference on the type? Do we want to redo the 2020 workshop, or do we want to look at a different way of doing it this time?
Anything for Becky? Suggestions?
How well did it work last time, in your opinion?
It went really well. We had it scheduled out so that there would be 3 rounds of voting. We only needed to do 2. And then we really kind of coalesced around the tier 1 list of projects that we had, so.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion. So the first round of discussion, there was a lot of back and forth and, rolling our sleeves up and having some discussion on why projects are where they're at. But it came down to a pretty decisive where everybody sort of stood. And it was based on a lot of our tiered process, right? So tier 1, I-25 got a lot of votes, 34 got a lot of votes, and that's sort of how it was tiered out in the past. But there was a lot of discussion. Just because we only did 2 doesn't mean we didn't use up the full 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, so there was we did have and I didn't include it for this one because I didn't know which direction you would want to go. But for this previous one, we had 90 minutes of discussion where people could talk amongst themselves. We had a table for everybody, for each community. You talk amongst yourselves, so it was the council members and then the TAC members. If they wanted to bring other staff, they could do that as well. Talking, and we sort of just stood back. We answered questions as staff if they were needed, but we didn't want to influence the process other than to say, here's where the projects are. And it went really well. People didn't, sometimes they took up the whole time and sometimes they didn't, but yeah, I think it went really well. The discussion was helpful, and then everyone talked amongst each other as well. So.
Commissioner James, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I want to echo what Johnny and Becky said. It was incredibly successful. I thought an incredibly collaborative event. Good conversation. We rolled up our sleeves. We got her done. I just thought it was incredibly collaborative, incredibly fair. I've been a part of a lot of these kind of processes. And with credit to then Suzette and Becky, this one went phenomenally well. And I think the outcome was kind of where we figured it'd be, and as also incredibly fair. Becky, I'd highly recommend that we do the same thing again. And if you need a big space, well, you're welcome to come to Will County's Event Center. We got a big one for you. So don't let space be a concern for you. We can find something, but it was a good way to go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think the rest of us weren't around, maybe. Were you around back then?
I was
All right,
not.
so, Bill, you got a comment?
Yeah, I participated in that kind of interaction, and it's dynamic and allows for good discussion. So I think it's a great way to go. Yeah.
All right, I think you got your answer. Do you need a place? When do you need a place?
So we, last month, Mayor
Okay.
Karspek had offered, so I'm gonna work with his staff to see if it's
Big enough.
available. Yeah, and if it's big enough, and then if not, then I will be reaching out. I've had others that also, so Greeley and I think Loveland and then Wells County, so we have options.
Super. Okay, you got anything else, Becky?
Nope, that's it.
Anything from the gallery? Any questions for Becky? I think we're good. Thank you. All right, item number 15 is Transportation Commissioner, Commissioner Jim Kelly.
I was going to talk about PD 14, but I think we've hammered that pretty good. The commission had a field trip really scheduled. We had a short meeting in the morning on Wednesday. Thursday took off to Floyd Hill, which is a big project, and we toured that area to see what was going on, what they're addressing. Then went off to the Eisenhower Tunnel. Everybody else, they were all on a Mustang, and continued on to Glenwood Springs to look at the Mesa Bridge, which has been under duress. I turned around, I didn't go to Glenwood Springs. It was quite unbelievably interesting. If you ever get a chance to go to the Eisenhower Tunnel, what a engineering marvel it is. And the operations centers there are super high tech and ready for basically anything that happens there. Other than that, there really wasn't anything that we did was budget wise, was moving some money around on our spreadsheets. We did have, sometimes CDOT is pretty amazing. We were going west on 70. We were just a couple of miles from the tunnel when across coming and going east, a big truck guy had a seizure, and he went from the right-hand lane. The semi came all the way across, just out of control, hit the guardrail, and went for a mile, skidding along, came right by us. The guardrails held up, but it was crazy. It could have gone over. There was a CDOT gentleman who happened to be going east, who in a CDOT truck trailed the guy until it came to a halt, and then jumped out, ran in, and gave him help and got him to the hospital. But anyway, business-wise, it was really PD 14. That was the main discussion, and I tried to deliver your input. Didn't get a whole hell of a lot of support, but I think you might. I talked to some of the commissioners afterwards, and if there's specific language, I think that language might fly and get included in the living document. So that's it. That's really all I had to report, unless somebody has a question.
Any questions for Commissioner Kelly?
I just want to thank you for your effort on that, Commissioner. I mean, that's.
Yeah, that's what I'm there for, so.
Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
And I guess we won't say goodbyes yet. Hopefully you'll be here next month.
Yeah, I'll be around next month, and that'll be that.
Super.
So,
That'll be that.
yeah, by the way, they haven't identified anybody as a replacement yet.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, let's move on to the staff report. It's actually a written report that's on page 41 of the packet. CTIO is a written report that's in the handout. Then we got the I-25 Coalition, and while you're at it, Commissioner James, you can cover the US 34.
Happy to do them both. US 34 relatively brief. We just continue to put together the TMO. That's kind of our sole thing right now. Of course, we heard the active transportation plan that has a piece of it on 34, where we got those kind of stark numbers about a five-fold population increase. So US 34 is good, continues to work towards the establishment of the TMO. They are in the process of hiring an executive director. That, in my opinion, is in a good spot. I-25 Coalition continues to be well attended. A good group of people on the I-25 Coalition advocating for a roadway that is getting built out. We heard about the establishment, soft opening of the Mustang service that's hitting the mobility hubs there. Mayor Pro Tem Malo in your neck of the woods, down into Perth area as well, and the Frederick Firestone area as well. So it's good to see those mobility hubs online. I'm a big fan of those efforts. Also heard about the soft opening in your area. John, you'll have to kind of hammer down that ribbon cutting. I had heard October 22nd, but you can speak to a different number there. Lots going on. I-25.
No, it's
What's
not going
that?
to be the 16th. I know it's not going to be the 16th, so we'll keep you informed.
So that we heard a conversation about that, and we heard conversation about a roadway that's coming together nicely. So I appreciate your attendance. If you attend on the I-25 Coalition, if your municipality or county has a dog in that hunt, so to speak, we'd love to have you there. If you're not on our email list, make sure you let me know, and I'll have Evan and Elizabeth get you on there. That, Mr. Chair, is my report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Item number 20 is non-attainment area air pollution mitigation enterprise. Kristen is not with us tonight. If you do have any questions on that, I would suggest you just go ahead and email them to Kristen. Next, we have item 21, Front Range Passenger Rail District. I know Will is not online, but I think Tricia is.
Hi, everyone. I've got a quick update. I was not at the meeting earlier this week, but I can just give you a quick overview of what's happened in the last month. RTD's Northwest Rail Peak Service Feasibility Study update was completed in September. And surprise, surprise, they found that rail from Denver through Boulder up to Longmont would be really expensive, running upwards of over $650 million. So it was concluded that working with Front Range Passenger Rail could lower those costs and speed up the timeline. So that was what we wanted to hear. And it'll also help increase opportunities for federal funding. The next big report that we're looking at for Front Range Passenger Rail is the Service Development Plan, and that'll be completed by the end of December. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a retreat down in Denver, and what we're really going to be concentrating on is what the campaign will look like going forward to get passenger rail on the 2026 ballot. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Tricia. Any questions for Tricia? All right, seeing none, before we move on to Liz, you may have noticed some CDOT folks in the room. We've agreed to do their report quarterly, but since they're here, do we have any questions for the CDOT folks?
Thank them for being here.
Thank you for being here.
That's our update. We're in President's Day. But our updates will come more quarterly unless you want something specific, and then we'll be glad to do that.
Fair enough.
We probably will be adding time to your agendas as needed for the plan update when we get to our 10-year plan update, just so we can keep you guys apprised of what we're doing. But we have been having not a difficult time putting together updates for you, but we want it to be interesting, exciting, meaningful for you guys. So we're moving to more of a quarterly project update schedule in that regard.
Yeah, fair enough. Just coordinate with Paul, and we'll get you on the agenda when you want to be or need to be. Okay.
If you're waiting for what Josie said, you might be waiting for a while, because we're not very exciting.
Josie's highly entertaining.
She asks me too much. John?
Yes.
Paul, Paul, when you get a date for that ribbon cutting, can you make sure we get it? Maybe have someone put it on our calendars?
Yeah, I'll look around because I also heard the conflicting dates.
Super. Last but not last, Mayor Pro Tem Liz Hyde from Eden will update us on what's happening here. This is one of my favorite cities in the North Front Range, so appreciate you hosting.
It's my favorite. I'm a big fan. But if you came from the west, you know, the last time you came to Eaton, maybe the roundabouts were closed and they're open. So that's always exciting when you can use the roads you want to use and not detour around. So we're open. We had a ballot issue, T2A on the ballot last year. So starting January, we've already collected enough off of our 1% tax initiative so that we have started, we repaved 4 streets inside town and part of County Road 39, which goes to our cemetery. So it's fun that on 1% you can collect enough to start doing something with people's money. And last time you were here, I was hoping that our project downtown would be done, but CDOT didn't have CDOT issue. But I think we have it all worked out now. And so we can go to bid this month and move forward so that hopefully the next time you're downtown, all of our downtown issues will be resolved. You can look around and see all of the pictures of the fun things on what we've got planned for downtown Eden as we move forward with our full downtown streetscape, full curb and gutter, new everything. This is going to be a hot mess for a quick moment, but when it's done, it will be glorious. And we're hoping that that all coordinates at the same time. We go to election December 10th for a DDA downtown as well. So hoping to coordinate the starting of this project with a new DDA downtown and move forward in that direction. So that's all fun new things. Thank you all for coming and driving this direction, and safe travels home tonight.
And great food.
It was just barbecue just up the road here on Highway 85, so.
Did you get paid for that?
No, but I should take my share home and leftover brisket.
All right, as usual, if there's any further agenda items or discussion points, just please share them with Paul. The next meeting is November 7th, hosted in the city of Loveland. Look forward to it.
Another one of my favorite cities.
We are adjourned a half hour early.